I'm okay. I'm totally fine.
Hello everybody, it's MadWilson83 here with more Drawing at the Mad Cave. Doing something a little different this time. I'm going to show you what I do to make a chapter of Naruto Chronicles, and to an extent, how I make most of my comics, since they all use a very similar format. In general, I start off with something written down. Nothing much, maybe a note on what I want to happen, but for the most part, a lot of my writing is fluid, with a general direction I want to go in. Like in the case of the current arc, I had several chapters written down in notes and so forth, even on Notepad on my computer, which gave me a good idea for the general pace that I wanted the chapters to go in. Something like, for one example, I had written down something very small, and it was just simply Naruto and Hinata are confronted by Yuri. Mysterious group shows up, and that was it. And from that little note, I wrote an entire chapter. I mean, you'll probably know which one it is just by looking at it. And literally, it was part fight, and well, I mean, it went over two or three chapters, but you know, you had Yuri coming at the end of one, and then into the next one there was a small fight, and at the end of that one, the bad guys showed up, and that gave me the general idea of what I wanted to do. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I write and how I do things. What you should be seeing right now is what I tend to start with after the writing process, and that is working on the thumbnails. I use an A4 piece of paper with 20 rectangles representing pages printed on it, and this is all pre-done. I have a template on my computer, then I print out like 20 or 30 of them, and just when I want to start a chapter I just pick one out and draw it out. It's just really easy, really quickly. A lot of what I do is time saving, and with templates I don't have to draw boxes, and keeps it neat and allows me just to see how many pages I've got left to do or how many pages I'm in, and so on and so forth. I do have other templates, like there's one with 9 large boxes or 3 rows of 3. That's really short comics, like if I do a commission and such. But I think since we're just talking about NHC, we'll just stick with this example. In these boxes, I tend to take my notes that I've written down, whether it's on paper or on my computer, and I just kind of sit around thinking and doodling in the boxes and start to sketch out quite quickly the layout of the panels, which is probably the important part of this whole process, and then a rough idea of what each box contains, which, yes, is important, but I think at this point isn't as important, except only to the point where you just get the gist of what you want to go on and in there. And I do this for the entire chapter, and once, I mean, it's got 20 pages worth on here, and I can just go back, I can erase, I can redesign, because I do it all in pencil, so it's quite easy to make mistakes. This is the point where you want to make mistakes, where you think, okay, this looks good, this doesn't look good, and you've kind of got to have an imagination of how the finished part will look when you're using thumbnails and doing them this quickly. And basically, once they are done, I just simply have them on the side when I draw the full pages themselves. For my pages, I use another A4 template, this time with 4 large manga size shaped boxes. They're about the same dimensions as a proper manga page, so they look right. For quickness, I even bordered them with lines on the side, so that when I make panels with my ruler, I can just kind of make sure that they're the same level either side. And then it'll come out parallel rather than diagonal, or you kind of be like, oh no, it's all squiffed, and which I had a hell of a lot of trouble with in the early days, so that's why I added those in. And plus it makes it a little bit quicker, and I don't have to double check with like another ruler to make sure it's correct one side and such. I make the pages on a left to right way, so I'm starting from the left, going to the right. So the left box to the right box, and left panel to the right panel. So basically, I'm drawing it backwards. This is just so that I'm not kind of leaning on the pages or smudging them with my hand or anything once I finish them. So that helps, and less editing later on, because I used to smudge them all the time when I did it right to left, because that's how I do my panel layouts. But I continue to make the pages to look like the rough thumbnail designs I did, hence why, that's why I do them. But it doesn't mean I have to stick to them, and more often than not I tend to tweak the final pages as I draw them, or in some cases I have restructured the entire layout just to look more dynamic, or even cutting down what's going on to make it look better. And I just do this usually on the fly, because I look at the thumbnail and thinking, okay, yeah, it looked good, it's got the right amount of panels, but you know what, I think the scene needs a bit more action layout. I just go with what I feel is right. Or sometimes simply I'm just inspired with a new idea and I just want to quickly change this little bit of the scene. Just like the thumbnails, I do all the pages, usually about 20 for NHC, and then I scan them into my computer with my scanner, and then save them as full A4 pages. And then what I do is I tend to go on and then do the cover. I'm not going to cover the cover this time because I've drawn the cover image in one of the Mac Cave Draws videos. I have a template for that in a PSD file, so just basically I draw the image and then just stick it onto a base that I have, redo the words and stuff like that. But if you want to see a video on what I do for that, my process on that, it would be quick, but I can do that. And so just comment below if you want to see that. And this is the next stage. I've already scanned this, but what I used to do was when I would do a preview scan, I would then select the page and then scan that bit. So I'd scan the same page 4 times. It just took forever, and like I said, a lot of what I do is just to save a lot of time, because it does take a lot of time otherwise. So what I ended up doing is just scanning the full A4 page, and then once it's saved in Photoshop, I select all 4, and using a guideline and transform tool, I make sure they're all straight. So when I use the box select tool, I can just select one page, just a few pixels inside the black box line, so I'm not getting that black outer edge. Although you can do that, I mean, especially considering the way I do my panels, it doesn't really matter. But then I go to copy, or Control-C on the PC, and I create a new canvas and put it in, and just save this new page into the folder and naming it the number of the page, and it's done. And I do that for all the pages over and over, and then they're ready for editing. Editing is probably the one part I find is faster. I simply drag the page into Photoshop, check the levels, you Control L on PC, and then I just adjust it, and I make sure that the white, which usually comes out kind of grey after I scan it, that's white, and the pencil lines have gone from a very light grey to, well, not a very, very light grey, but lighter grey, and then to a darker grey, but not quite black. So the balance, if you do that, then you have the balance how you like it, and if you want to go darker, you can go darker. If you want to go lighter, you can go lighter. I kind of like to keep it like a still kind of grey, but a darker grey than when it was. After that, I create 2 layers on top of the base layer, and for I use those to make my panels. Using the guides again to border the common edges, like the top, the bottom of the panels of the same row or the same column, and the outside of the panels. So I've got a nice border around them. And with snap turned on, it's easy to use the rectangle tool to make the panel boxes. In this example, you can see that most of the boxes have some slanted sides, very slight on this one. And I just simply use the pen tool to select the corners and move them. On more complex panels, I usually use the pen tool and more guides and just move them around. And you can get some really good fancy boxes in there if you want. There are different various ways of doing it. Like sometimes if I have a panel going on top of another panel, I'll do the above panels first and then do the panel that goes underneath next, after I've kind of used the wand tool to select the outer edges, so I don't go into them. Once all the lines are in place, there are two ways to ink them. The usual way is you get the pen tool, and with the brush size as you want it, in my case I usually have it at 5 pixels per NHC. You click stroke from the menu of the pen tool and it inks the lines of the layout. But the way I do it is really quick. Is you just hit B on PC to bring up the brush, and then you enter and it just puts it on. Sometimes I press enter 2 or 3 times and it makes the line quite thick and you don't get that such a fuzzy edge. And so that's how I do that very quickly, and it always ends up with the same result anyway. So just like I said, I do a lot of this stuff just for time saving. Afterwards I remove the guides and the shape tool shapes for the boxes, so I'm just left with the black lines. And with the wand tool, excuse me, burping there, and with the wand tool I select the outer edges, so basically fit the outside of the boxes, and then fill it with a white. Once that is done, of course, I just simply browse my eye over the page with the eraser tool, and I check for marks, like extra pencil lines I don't want, tidy up the edges, any smudges or anything, and clean those up. And I tend to be quick and not too picky with the cleaning, since if I wanted it to be perfect, I would be inking it too. This is what I say for Onagi and the minisodes. Sometimes I may add some lines I missed or need to redo with the brush tool, and this does happen a lot. And with that I use a dark grey for the brush, and I set it between a 25 to 50% opacity. And with the blend mode to multiply, it does look like a very simple pencil marking. I wouldn't do it for a whole image because it will look like it's like a digital drawing. But for tidying up an NHC page, it does look good, and often you can't tell. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Okay, so once the page is sufficiently prepared, I move on to the text. Now the way I write text tends to go through different routes, yet all the same. See, I write things down in notebooks or on post-it notes, or sometimes on the computer, but not often. But I do have a general idea of what's going on written down. It's like I want them to talk about this is the subject, I want her to insult her, or I want him to be cocky, and most of the time I just kind of generally write it as I go along from panel to panel, so I don't write down a script. But sometimes I do write a script if I want something very specific. The problem with writing a script is you have to sometimes edit the text down, because if you don't know how much panel you've got, and you have to be very precise, you can sometimes overfill the panel with dialogue. So you have too much writing, and you can very easily do that. Once I've got everything written down, of course, it's just a case of then making the bubbles, and this is where again you have to be careful of space, because it's not just the text, it's the bubble size, which will be bigger than the text. That's why a lot of times, like on the censor shows, I just have written text. That way I can put as much text in as I want, and I don't have to worry about bubble space. Now the way I make the bubbles has not changed for a long time. I just found it is the the easiest way and very fast. I mean, I used to, in the early NHC pages, I used to draw in the bubbles. Again, it was the case of then I had to make the text fit, and sometimes you'll see that the text goes outside the bubbles because I made the bubbles too small. And sometimes I had to literally resize the bubbles so I could get the bubbles to fit. But yeah, the way I do it with this is I have a preset for the blend mode, specifically just for panels, and I just make the shapes, and by clicking that it would automatically fill it with white, line it the right size line, and make a bit of white outline, and it looks like a bubble. And you know, sometimes I might need to make it a bit thicker or a bit thinner depending on the size, because I have one to fit all, but sometimes the pages are bigger, so I have to kind of just boot it up, and once it's done I can just copy and paste the preset. Yeah, but then it's just the shapes, as I said, I have to work on. Now usually they are ovals with a speech direction triangle, and I do that by using the oval shape tool and the line tool. And you can make them quite versatile, because you can make them bend if you want and stuff like that. You can make them bubbly or cloudy by just adding bubbles, and you can make various shapes with the shape tool, stars or whatever. And then you've got like the shouty spiky bubbles, which I found I tried doing them with the pen tool, but it just always seemed to look weird, and then I started doing them with the brush tool and then filling that in, or sometimes just making a big brush mark and then just erasing the outer edges to make it spiky, and it looks really good, I think. So yeah, I mean, you can do it that way. I mean, again, if you want a new video on how I do that and what my presets are, I can do that. Just comment below. But once that's done, I then save it to a PSD and overwrite the JPEG, so I've got the completed copy and a PSD copy, so I can make changes quite quickly, you know, due to spelling, because literally Photoshop is not a text spell checker. It'll check the spelling, but that's it. It won't check the context like you do on Word. So really, I need to stick things into Word and check them out and then put them back in. But again, that's time consuming. So as many of you have probably pointed out, words will be spelt the same as other words, but it's the wrong word that I'm using. So yes, I mean, I've got to work on that. But yeah, once it's all saved, I put it into a PDF for the chapter, which I've got a whole chapter, because that'll be posted on like Patreon. But yeah, because you get that free as a full chapter every 2 weeks on Patreon. So I do it in the PDF, and also when I make the full volume, I can just stick in the PDFs and it will combine it into one thing, and I can just put that on for the download. And then once all of them are done, I put them into my stash on DeviantArt ready for posting. So I hope this has been informative, I really do. So just tell me how you do yours. You know, I'd like to know. I mean, do you go for it and make it up as you draw? You know, do you know, so you don't have anything prepared or planned? Do you write a script and plan out every little detail? Do you do thumbnails, or do you just say, screw it, I'm just going to draw, I've written it, I'm just going to draw the pages as I see fit. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I would love to hear your process. I'd love to hear if my process helped you in some way later down the line, or if you're going to try it my way, or, you know, I would love to hear it. And if you have any questions, or, you know, about anything, you know, it doesn't have to be about this video, it could be about some of my work, or some videos, or you'd like to propose an image you'd like me to see me doodle in my doodle videos, or draw for my Matt Draws video. That's really nice. You know, just comment below, or, you know, you just want to say hello, just comment below. I would love to hear your comments. I mean, I feed off your comments. Yes, I am a comment vampire. I feed off them. Wah, give me your comments. And if you like the video, please click the little thumbs up guy that lives under this video. He's always lonely and he needs friends. And maybe if you want to, you could subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to reach 1,000 subscriptions. That would be awesome. So I thank you if you help me get closer to that. I thank you though right now for watching this video. It's been a pleasure making it, and I hope it's been a pleasure for you in watching it. So please check out my other videos if you can. I've got many on here so far, and they're only going to grow, I hope. And until next time, thank you, and catch you next video.